Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Dent, and this is the English exception, Part 2, from Chapter 17, Section 3. If you remember correctly, a quick review is that the last time we stopped, there was a civil war going on in England. Once again, a civil war is a war among the same people within the same country. And it was the Cavaliers on one side versus the Roundheads on the other. Once again, the Cavaliers, supporters of Charles I, the monarchy, the king. And we also have the Roundheads on the other side. They are parliamentarians, if you will, supporters of Parliament, and their leader is Oliver Cromwell. And in 1647, Charles I, King of England, is captured and put into prison in 1647. Now, by 1649, Charles I is put on trial. So he stood trial, and he is actually, in 1649, found guilty of being a tyrant, a traitor, a murderer, and a public enemy to the English people. So therefore, his sentence is actually death. So in 1649, it is swiftly taken care of. His head is actually chopped off in one blow. He is beheaded from a scaffold at the Banqueting House in London on January 30th, 1649. So there is a death to the King of England in 1649. So after the beheading of Charles I, Parliament is dominated by the Puritans and Cromwell. Now, this whole scenario of King Charles I losing his head sent shockwaves throughout Europe. Now, Parliament is in charge, and what happens is people throughout Europe say to themselves, particularly the monarchs in the different countries and regions, that if this could happen in England, this could also happen here. So in 1649, Charles I is executed, and the rippling effect of this sent shockwaves throughout Europe, and they had to, once again, take a look at how they were ruling, the kings and the queens and the dictators and so forth, and keeping, once again, concerned about, will this actually spread to our country? What am I going to do? That type of thing. So now that Charles I is gone, Oliver Cromwell takes over power. He is actually in 1653, he actually wants to be called, by that time, Lord Protector, and by 1653 as well, he rules through the army. So he is actually taking over. He becomes an absolute dictator, what's called an absolute dictator, absolute power, and he dictates what's going on. He wants to be called, once again, Lord Protector, and by 1653 he gets rid of Parliament, and he rules as an absolute dictator. Now, after ruling for a while, Oliver Cromwell dies in 1658. And in 1658, he gets a state funeral with honors at Westminster Abbey, right next to Parliament. It's still located there. However, after a while, now that Oliver Cromwell's dead, people start to realize that this guy was not really a nice ruler, and they had second thoughts about Oliver Cromwell. So after time, like 3 years, this is a true story now, his body was actually dug up, the carcass was actually hanged, and his head, Oliver Cromwell's head, is severed from his body. It is put on a pike and displayed outside Westminster Abbey for 24 years. Believe it or not. It falls down eventually, and this is, rumor has this, it falls down, someone takes it, and the head itself resurfaces in the 20th century, and in 1960 it is reburied on the grounds of Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge, where Oliver Cromwell was from. Once again, Ripley's Believe It or Not, if you will. It's a crazy story, but it's pretty much true. Maybe a little bit of legend in there, but the basics are there. Now, going back in time just a little bit, when still Oliver Cromwell was alive, the English Commonwealth period from 1649 to 1658, this is a time frame in England where there are without the monarchy, and there are many changes that are occurring in English society. Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans are in charge, and they are a conservative bunch, and they close the theaters. That's the main entertainment for people at the time. They close the pubs and taverns, and pubs and taverns at that time were the big gathering spots for gossip, news of the day, business transactions. It was the livelihood of English society, the pubs and taverns, kind of like today. He outlawed dances and gambling, and they promoted strict Puritan morality. It wasn't as strict as some might believe, but it was more strict than before. So that's the English Commonwealth period, a very different time in English history. Now, getting back to once Oliver Cromwell dies, there's a big problem. Who takes over as leader? And so, now that Oliver Cromwell is not very well liked after death, Parliament decides to actually do the following. They actually ask Charles I's son to come back. What would eventually become Charles II, he had actually fled when the whole Civil War was going on, exiled, if you will, in the Netherlands and France, particularly. And so, from 1658 to 1660, people in England were searching for a new leader, if you will. And they decided to invite back Charles II to rule as King of England, to bring back the monarchy. And you can just imagine that they talked to Charles, what would be called Charles II, the son of Charles I, and said something like, "Oh, we're sorry about that. We didn't mean it. It was a mistake. Sorry about killing your dad." However, Charles II did agree to come back and help rule. However, this is a big, there's some new rules that have to be established. So Charles II needs to accept what's called the Petition of Right. That is, once again, if you remember correctly, the king can't just raise taxes. He has to go through Parliament. So Parliament's back. So, once again, taking a little bit of power away. Charles II says, okay. He is popular with the people when he comes back. He is secretly Catholic in a Protestant nation. He doesn't flaunt it. He had many mistresses, actually, women on the side. That's what he was kind of known for. And he rules with Parliament well. So they kind of work well together. So in 1685, Charles II dies. His brother now, James, becomes King of England. This would become James II. the second James, that is, King of England. And this reign of his did not last very long, and it did not go very well. He clashed with Parliament. He is openly Catholic. He suspends laws. He appoints Catholics to high positions, once again, in this Protestant nation. Once again, as I had mentioned before, he doesn't work well with Parliament. There's friction with Parliament the whole time. So by 1688, essentially, James II runs away. So James II, once again, essentially runs away, and this led to what's referred to as the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Now, the Glorious Revolution of 1688 involves William and Mary and James II. Now, in 1688, Parliament and James II are battling. Representatives from Parliament go to Mary. Now, who is Mary? Mary is James II's Protestant daughter. And they ask her and her husband, William, to lead England. Can we get rid of your dad? Kind of remarkable, but this is what happened. And so she lands with William and their forces, and this is why it's called a glorious revolution, is that it is a bloodless overthrow. In other words, James II just gets up and leaves. He doesn't really fight. So, therefore, in 1688, James II steps down, and William and Mary become king and queen of England at that point. Now, just like Charles II, when he's asked to come back, he has to have certain terms for him to rule. The same thing applies here. With William and Mary coming on board, if you will, to rule, they have to agree to certain terms. And those terms are as follows. They have to accept the English Bill of Rights, which gave certain rights to the people of England and took away power from the monarchy. So, for instance, limited monarchy it established, which is less power, limited. The power of the purse, that means money, the money situation will be controlled by Parliament. Habeas corpus, which means the writ of habeas corpus, W-R-I-T. A writ is a court order in which, and this is still with us today, is that people cannot be arrested without being told why they are being arrested. So in other words, you just can't like someone back in England and just throw them into jail and let them rot there. They have to be charged with a crime. They have to be told. And then also what is established in the Bill of Rights, and this is enforced, is the trial by jury. To go in front of one's peers to be found either guilty or innocent by their peers, not just a dictator, not just a king. Once again, all of these Bill of Rights are taking power away from the monarchy and are giving it to the people. And as you can well imagine, you probably have heard of the Bill of Rights, the American Bill of Rights. Well, ours are based upon the English Bill of Rights as well. Thank you very much for listening.